September was a month filled with many things, one of them being a month to advocate for self care and suicide prevention. I spoke with professors and a content creator who speaks on mental health and what are some ways we can not only help ourselves, but other people as well.
So my name is Mark Nichols. I am a alumni of Morehouse College. I pursued a degree in economics, which landed me a job in strategy consulting after graduation. I got delayed for a year, which caused me to kind of get like that little bit of a post-grad depression funk, which actually spurred my content creation career where I just got on the internet. I kind of got sick of talking to my friends about the same issues, and I was like, somebody has to relate to me. And then I got on the internet, talked about things that were like seen as taboo or like, I guess, more personal. And it turns out there were thousands of people that related, and the rest was history. I feel like so mental health is like such a holistic topic when you think about it, because of course, like a lot of people immediately think like just your mental well-being, but there's so many different things that go into that, like whether it's burnout, whether it's setting boundaries, relationship management, communication, friendship breakups, like the list goes on, right? Everything that happens in your life is almost like a conglomerate into your mental health. And I feel like my content kind of symbolizes that. It talks about the intricacies of like maneuvering through adulthood for the first time, getting through this thing that we call life with friendship breakups and relationship breakups, and people just malnourishing you and not really cherishing you in the way that they should. So I feel like my content in a way leans into the mental health aspect, but then talks about the empowerment piece of how you can take back your ownership of your reality and also like understand your self-worth. I think when it comes to my content, I have two goals in mind. I either want people that like have been like, I guess, partaking in like things that might have not been the most considerate to others around them to acknowledge their faults in the past and grow from those. But I also want people to take away from my content if they have went through these things in the past and they felt like nobody understood them, or they felt silenced, or they felt like they were going crazy because they just nobody understood them. I want them to be able to walk away from like watching one of my videos, looking back on it and be like, wow, like maybe I wasn't crazy. Maybe I wasn't alone just because I didn't have this immediate supporting cast. Maybe this wasn't something that was like abnormal. And I think, of course, when we're talking about suicide prevention and different things of that sort, I feel like it's so important for you to have a community around you that's uplifting you. But some of us don't have that privilege. And I think that's the beautiful aspect of being able to create an online platform is like you are able to connect with people that back in the day you might have never been able to cross paths with to have a conversation with. Is to honestly encourage people to take that next step in their journeys, whether it's like being more emotionally mature, whether it's being a better friend to their companions, whether it's being community builders, whether it's inspiring other people to make deep topics on mental health and self-development and personal growth, bigger niche on the internet. Like I feel like all of these things are so they're important because I think again, the internet is like our generation is extremely impressionable. And when people get on the internet, what you consume and what you spend your time watching does play a part in how you show up academically. It plays a part in how you show up in your career. And even beyond that, it just plays a part in how you show up in real life. And I think like we've seen like so many different people like that have like controlled the masses with like preaching rhetorics that might be hateful or harmful to groups. So honestly, the reason why I made my platform about what I did is because I felt like not only was this a topic that I was passionate about, my father, I mean, yeah, my father, he's disabled. And how he got disabled is he had strokes. And when he had his strokes, what it was caused by was smoking cigarettes. And of course, like from the surface level, people will say, okay, like how is that correlated to mental health? But the reason he was smoking a pack and a half a day of cigarettes is because he was clinically depressed. And of course, he was like refusing to be medicated. He did not want to like admit that he had like something going on because like of course like with depression you have a chemical imbalance in your brain which like just causes you to constantly be this way. He was self-medicating. And of course, like at a certain point in time, like your vex is gonna get the best of you, which it happened to my dad. And I feel like that's why, like, not only like on like a healthier standpoint, I always make sure that I'm taking care of my health. I'm working out constantly. I've never smoked a cigarette a day in my life. But I also feel like as I am starting to like progress through life, something that is like a normalcy for a lot of African American individuals is we break generational curses and we are the ones to start new things. And I think me creating my platform around these topics, I just really wanted to like lead by example and, set the tone in the right way, of course.
My name is Kathy Iandoli. I'm a professor at NYU, proud NYU graduate, author, media coach, and documentarian. I have worked on or have been working on. The first one is a journal called Get Your Mind Right, WRITE, which is actually a reflection of what was going on in my media coaching sessions with some of my artists and using music as kind of like this vessel for mental health betterment and all these other things. That released last year, I believe. Um, and I also have a book coming out on October 14th with Gucci Mane, which I was a co-author on, called Episodes, Diary of a Recovering Madman. And that actually tackles Gucci's mental health journey over the last several years. But as an overall practice, I utilize elements of life coaching and other, I guess, vehicles for mental health wellness in my practices as a media coach as well to artists. Discussions on mental health can be seen sometimes as taboo. A lot of times artists really struggle with being vulnerable, and that can be for a number of reasons, right? It can be from their own pressure for artistry. It can be due to gender. A lot of times, those who identify as male really struggle with being able to express when they're feeling anxious or sad or things of that nature. And then also, there's subject of race. A lot of young Black artists who are not given as much access or opportunity to things involving mental health betterment often struggle with being able to say those things out loud. And, it in hip hop, especially, you're talking about a number of different factors as to why an artist may not be willing to speak on certain things involving their mental health. I mean, it does transcend genre, but in my line of work, this is where I've seen it the most.
She also speaks about Gucci Mane's memoir that has just now been released.
Since this is his third work, and this is what you would, I guess, call a period memoir, which is like a period of time in a person's life, this one was pretty heavy in parts because it's really just Gucci processing so many things around him with this clarity that comes from him doing the work and also sobriety and all these other things where he was looking at situations so differently from when he might have like years back, right? It was an honor, first of all. But second of all, it and when people read the book, it'll make you really think about how we handle artists who are clearly struggling in the spotlight. I started in the music industry working with artists directly and then moving over to journalist and journalism as we became like a clickbait culture. I started to just realize that, it became less about the artist story and more about what story we can pull out of the artist to get headlines. And it just didn't feel good, right? So that's when I moved over to book writing with the artist and media coaching with the artist and documentaries with the artist and working directly with the artist. Because what I realized was that we're not preparing artists to know how to be famous and what all of that comes with. So one thing that I hope with any of the projects I do, and even just interacting with artists, is that we're able to start to see that artists are human beings. They're not just made to be put on stages and in studios for our consumption. And I think, the artists being able to be open about what their struggles are, in turn, will help the fan base.
My name is Joe Paranen, and I have been a member of the board as a trustee for 25 years. Vibrant Emotional Health is a national organization providing health and care to people with mental needs. The organization spun out of something called the Mental Health Association of New York City. And then that ran as a small mom and pop operation in New York with lots of little programs. And about 10 or 15 years ago, we developed a software that allowed us to merge calls, bring calls together, and we decided to follow the national footprint of putting together a national hotline. So I moved to New York in 1989 or 88, and with my wife, whose parents had built a private psychiatric hospital in New York City, the first and the only. And they had a great deal of interest in mental health, as did I, because my mother had tried to kill herself a couple of times. Growing up in Chicago, it was pretty scary. She had lots of issues, and it was difficult. So I immediately had an personal emotional connection to mental health. And when I got here, I asked, even though I was a journalist at the time, an executive at CBS News, I asked if I could be a trustee, which means I'm one of about a dozen people who provide oversight to at the time, the MHA NYC, and ultimately to Vibrant. So what do I do now is I look at all the staffing, budgets, I look at all the quality control, and I also provide direction and oversight and help in raising funds and awareness for now Vibrant Emotional Health. And I'm also on the board of Gracie Square Hospital, where I'm a trustee. Well, for me, it is a opportunity to raise the awareness in a general way. Everybody, all media organizations, potentially all hospitals, can talk about it, because if you go back to when I first got involved, in fact, if you go back to when I was a young man, there was a tremendous stigma associated with mental health problems. A lot of people would just rather kick it aside to the curb as opposed to dealing with the problem, talking, trying to find solutions for individuals. And what we're able to do now is continue to raise awareness. We're able to get the media, we're able to get organizations to talk about mental health this month, which is, I think, helpful in raising awareness and destigmatizing the mental health problem.
I'm Tatiana Diomi, your host for The Rundown, and you're listening to The Rundown only on 89.1 FM.